Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Keeping It Real with America's Supermom. I am excited about my next guest, Candace. We have connected on numerous occasions in Clubhouse, y'all. I know I talked to you about Clubhouse, but I meet phenomenal guests, such as the one that I have with me tonight. We are passionate about education and really moving the needle forward for our future generation. And we'll get into some of that, I'm sure, throughout the interview. But I want to begin by giving Candace the opportunity to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. And thank you so much for having me here. I have to tell you, Clubhouse is totally the new cool kids place to hang out. And I am like, because it's where all these leaders are, people who are forward thinking and who are excited and want to collaborate. That is where they're hanging out. And I love it. So my name is Candace Duggar, and I am a mom of two. I do not have as many kids as you do. I got two. Both my kids are special needs. My oldest has dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, ADHD, like put the label, we got it. And my youngest is on the spectrum. So that's a little bit about us. I actually, I came from a background of running large corporations and multi-million-dollar big teams and loved it. But I had a very serious health illness that put me on bed rest for many years. And it was during that time that I saw how much my own children were hurting in school, how much they were really broken and hurting. And I actually almost lost my son. He was 12 at the time, to suicide due to horrific bullying. And y'all, it's almost something that you can't even begin to imagine. You know, we think of what we dealt with. You know, I think that generational gap, there's such a disconnect between what it's like today from that cyberbullying world and gaming bullying, that 24/7 that never breaks. And so during that time, we were working with the school, trying to do what we thought was right to help him. And it just wasn't working. And so it was a combination of 24/7 bullying, right? 12 years old, really feeling broken, and then going to school every day. And what they have you working on is what you do absolutely don't do well. You spend 80% of your time focusing on your disabilities instead of how you're beautifully and uniquely made by God. And so I said, this just isn't working. It broke his spirit and his will to live. And so we actually pulled him out, and now we telecommute his education. A lot of people call that homeschooling. We call it telecommuting your education, because he takes classes all around the world. I mean, it's not me and him with the books. You know, it's not like I'm over here teaching everything. So he started doing that, and we founded Bullied, Broken, Redeemed, which is our business, to really help families come alongside. We equip leaders, parents, and youth on all aspects of Gen Z bullying. So we teach classes, workshops. I train Fortune 100 companies, all the way to coaching and working with parents whose children may have been in the same spot with us, to build back that confidence, heal through the trauma, put vocabulary to what happened to them, really take that power back, and then either using passion projects or business or some refocus to giving them purpose and joy to want to live and to want to give back and contribute. And so we're a big proponent. You know, I know a lot of people say hurt people, but healed people help others heal. And so we come alongside them and do that in a way that we want to empower this generation to make a big difference in the future. And they will.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you know, and
that's what
that is just awesome because, you know, right now I feel like it may not be an issue about bullying, but it's the mental wellness that's really struggling for a lot of children. And you have teachers that are struggling, students that are struggling, parents that are struggling. And, you know, there's this disconnect. You know, so for somebody who, you know, parents who are engaged and want to do something, you know, you were able to take your power back, so to speak, and implement this program. What advice would you give them about raising awareness or being more strategic about adding an emotional component to the schools as they have right now, you know, and dealing with their mental health?
Well, my first part is I really hope schools will hear me, is that you need to start empowering the parents again. When my son was hurting, it was go to the school, go to the administration, go to the counselors. Well, that put his life in danger. And he was then attacked and told, if you don't stop, we'll kill you. Like that forceful attack of being worse on him to shut him up. So that retaliation bullying, right? And so what can we do? We can empower parents. When most of this bullying, like cyberbullying or gaming bullying, these things are happening in our homes,
Mhm.
parents need to have awareness of what to do. So
Mhm.
stop keeping parents over here and empower them again with knowledge. Let them be a partner, not an enemy in this, right? Not always, we'll take care of it, we'll deal with it, we got this under control, you go back home. Let parents into the conversation through knowledge. And I say that because many people can't even define for you what bullying is. Most
Mm.
people think they know what it is, but could
Mhm.
you put the words to it? Would you know the difference between conflict and bullying? Would a parent
Wow.
know, right? The basics.
Mhm.
And if they do, what do they do and how do they help their child? And so one of the biggest things we want to do is teach, and I'm a big proponent of can we put this vocabulary around it and teach kids not only what to do, but what do they do? We all think, right? You think you know what to do if bullying's going to happen. Well,
Mhm.
90% of kids never tell their parents, 70% never tell anyone.
Mm.
So they're not asking for help because what
Mhm.
they're getting back isn't really help. There's a lot
Right.
of victim shaming. There's a lot of trying to put conflict resolution skills in a situation that conflict resolution should never be used in bullying, trying to bring parties
Mm.
together and have conversations because the reality is the bully does not want to have a resolution. This is
Right.
not about conflict. This is about putting their power over top of you to break you. And so if
Wow.
we don't teach this young, it's become a huge issue because in our society, we actually reward our bullies. If you think
Mm.
about it, right? These
Mhm.
kids aren't always the ones that are hurting, and people talk about from bad backgrounds and all these things. Many of these kids are very narcissistic, entitled, have had the path plowed for them. When something happens, somebody steps in. They're very manipulative, can have really high social IQs to
Mhm.
read a room, right? Turn it on somebody and gaslight them when that's what I'm that type of behavior. If we don't start curbing that, we have a bigger problem coming down the pike. And
Yeah.
so it's not really just about the bullying, it's about this social emotional piece and training people to be able to have boundaries, to be able to stand up for themselves in appropriate ways, to have, as we talked a little bit about that conflict resolution, but also
Mhm.
when you're in a place of being broken down mentally, what tools can you empower yourself for your own mental well being and taking that power back? Right? And that
I love
helps
it.
so much. It has so much to do with our own self confidence because our kids who tend to be bullied, they're easier targets. It can be body language, it can be tone, it can be a lot of things. And it's never their fault, but there are things we can do to help them not be an easy victim.
Mm.
And I think the reason I say that is if you've ever watched the things like you can show a criminal a parking lot and they're going to tell you who's going to get robbed, right?
Right.
Because they know. It's the same thing
Mhm.
with the situation. It's easy to pick out who it's going to be because that targeting behavior is easy to pick out. And so,
Mhm.
can we correct tone and the head up and your energy and the way you're putting your feet down and how you're walking with purpose and going? Can we do that? Can we
Mhm.
help walk you into your confidence to make
Mhm.
that a little easier? Right. So, which is why when kids are struggling with these issues, switching schools
Mhm.
or changing classrooms, those things aren't going to fix it because it's not a
Right.
geography issue. Bullying is
Mhm.
not a geography issue, and it's not a school issue. It's a cultural issue. It's in our
Mhm.
politics. It's in our workplace. It's on
Mhm.
Clubhouse. I
Mhm.
mean, look at the rooms there. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So can we empower people, not just our children, but our culture to take their power back and how to stand up and handle this?
Yeah.
That's
Now,
important to me.
I love that whole point about empowering. So,
Mhm.
we talk about the parents being empowered and,
Right.
you go into the administration or going up the
Mm.
proper chain of command as you did, but for some parents who are finding that that is just not a resolution, what should be some steps that they take in order to continue to be empowered
Yeah.
and to get results rather than going the way
Well,
that's yeah.
first, I would start with really important document, document, document. Know
Mhm.
your vocabulary and use powerful words. Is your child being assaulted?
Mhm.
Are they? Right? Are they being
Right.
verbally? Are they being harassed? Are you dealing with a discrimination issue? Because bullying is not a federal law, there's no policy against bullying, but there are behaviors behind bullying that are criminal: assault, battery, harassment, discrimination. Are there categories that you can hold accountability and more feet to the fire for that? Document everything. When you go to the school, if your child has been assaulted, it's put this word aside for bullying. Yes, you need to know what that is. And I'll break that down for you in 1 second to make sure you are dealing with a bullying case. But put words behind it that hold the school accountable and make sure there's resolution. Because if they tell you there's zero tolerance, you have a bigger problem. Because if you had zero tolerance, you have zero students. Don't come at me with that. Tell me what that means. What does zero tolerance mean? Tell me what your policy is. What are you doing? And what is the resolution behind it? Don't let that word that's easy to throw around be the answer, right? What are you doing behind that? What are the steps being taken? What is the accountability being held to keep your child safe? It's important to know. And when you're documenting a case, keeping who was there, like in our classes when we teach our courses to parents and students, keeping court action of everything that happened, documenting things so that you have backups and photographs. Do you have copies of records on phones? Do you have recordings on gaming? Whatever your local laws, obviously always pay attention to your local laws, but make sure that you have your case well documented, because if the school isn't taking action, you may need to go to the police. And that's just a reality. You may not be able to have resolution within in your school. But if you are dealing with a child who's being horribly harassed or is dealing with assault and battery, you need to have your ducks in a row. So look at it from those different angles and use words that bring back your power, because you got to take it seriously. The word bullying is thrown around like, he's bullying me. Well, right? We need to know what we're talking about. It's like it almost needs a new name because it's so cruel. We've watered it down. And so I do, if it's okay, I want to take a second to make sure this is the easiest way we teach our kids and families. I teach 3 steps, and I could read you guys the whole definition of bullying, and it's very boring and big and mercy me, look it up, right? It's just, you read it and it's a whole lot of words that don't mean anything. But I teach it like this. Is it ARP? And it was taught to me that a long time ago. Is it A? Is the behavior aggressive? Is it repeated, happening again and again, or one really strong probability that was a threat, right? And is there a power imbalance? Those 3 things, you're dealing with bullying. And so when parents call me and go, well, I'm not sure if it's bullying. Or if we're talking in a workplace, well, I'm not sure if it's really bullying or what we're dealing with. Well, is it aggressive? Is it repeated? And is there a power imbalance? If it is, you are dealing with bullying. Simple.
Wow.
Very simple. If it's not, we could be looking at conflict. And when there's conflict, there are tons of conflict resolution skills that you can use to help come to an agreement that people can move forward. But if it's bullying, the goal is to put that person down and to use power over them to cause maximum pain. No amount of conflict resolution will fix that. And so you've got to know what you're dealing with first, right? So when you go to a school and they say, well, that's just kids being kids, or, oh, they're just teasing, or no big deal, you can say, nope. It is aggressive, and you explain what happened. It repeated. It happened on this occasion. It happened on the bus. It's happened on the playground. It's happened and it's happened in my house. It's repeated. And there's a power imbalance, and here's why. And you write that out because your child hasn't retaliated in this action. Right? You got to know why. And I'll tell you what's the most interesting to me is over a third of the calls I get at our foundation are from teachers, administrators, or coaches bullying kids. Isn't that shocking?
Okay.
I mean,
That is shocking.
Really, it's more. I get. I mean, not half, but a third of my calls are other coaches, teachers, and administrators bullying kids.
Wow, that's just crazy. Now, so what steps should a parent take for a child that has been victimized? So getting building back up their confidence and self-esteem.
Yeah. Well, I tend to look at like a 3S approach. I'm kind of big in trying to break it down into steps for people. So number 1, you've got to ensure is your child feels safe. Do they feel safe? Because if they don't feel safe, it's going to be really hard to do anything else and put anything in place. Is there support in place? Right? Do they have support, counselors, other people they can talk to? And then is there structure? And the reason that I say those things is that the brain development, the way things are happening, when you're in crisis or there's been trauma or things have happened, If you don't have some structure in your day, your brain's working overtime to figure out what it's doing. Keep some structure. It's very important. That's why even during COVID, it was like, try to wake up, right? Try to keep things going, try to have some routine, because you're dealing with all of these other new things. You need to have that structure so that your brain's not overthinking, why are we not? Is there another crisis we need to be dealing with because we're not in our routine, right? So create that structure. Make sure the child feels safe, because if they're not safe, you're really in a tough spot. And then you've got to create support. And parents, I know this is hard, but you may not be the person they're coming to first. They may need mentors, right? It might be counselors, it might be therapy, it may be mentors, it could be anybody. Let somebody talk into that child and breathe life into that child, because when our kids, if your children have reached out to you in any way in this area, them sharing with you their heart is more valuable than any gold, any Bitcoin, any gem or ruby. That information can save their life. And I don't say that to be dramatic, but I have kids as young as 7 and 8 and 9 years old with full suicide plans that come to us.
Yeah.
Babies,
Mhm.
7.
Mhm.
10 years, 10 to 17, right? Second leading cause of death is suicide right now.
Yeah.
And there is so much going on with our kids that if they tell you, that information is more valuable than anything. You could literally save their life with that value, and not blowing them off like, but take that seriously, because to them it is serious. It may not be to you where you are with your wisdom and experience in life, but for where they are in their development, it's a big deal. And they need
Now,
to.
and so who should they call, reach out to when they do have, you might have a neighbor or overhear one of your kids' friends, especially now with this pandemic and, not being able to see their friends,
Yeah.
or, everything is so extreme to the point of talks of suicide.
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend kids do, or even
Well,
adults, when they hear something like that?
there is the crisis text line. So you can always, as a parent or as a kid, there's the crisis text line and the suicide support line. If you need help and advice, number one, it's there and available.
Mhm.
If your child, I will tell you, if your child has come to you and they have a friend who's concerned about that, as a parent, please don't wait. Pick up the phone and call that parent, get involved. You don't know. You don't know. Parents, if you have, I don't know, I'm not making money off this or promoting this company, but Bark is a company out there that has done quite a good job of monitoring online behavior and chats, and will actually notify parents if the child is texting information to somebody else. It says, I wish I wasn't here anymore, I wish I was dead. It'll actually alert the parents and send notifications so that you're not invading their privacy of reading all their texts, but if there are concerns that come up around like pornography, sex trafficking, drugs, things like that, or suicide, you're actually sent alerts. And that's a good place to the parents. Bark. It's BARK. It's literally like
Okay.
barks at you like a dog at the like bark. So it's
Wow.
yeah, that's something good to know about, because
Mhm.
our kids are tricky. But I will tell you, if you've got a kid who is really sly, they can also figure out how to get all those apps off phones and disable things. I mean, that's just like everything else in the world. We all do the best we can, but
Right.
nothing is 100% safe.
Mhm.
We're doing the best we can. And it's a tough time because parents are, I mean, besides the teachers and the counselors and, trying to manage the therapies and the doctor's appointments, parents are also struggling. I mean, I know it's a lot.
Mhm.
It's a lot.
Mhm.
It's a lot. And sometimes you need somebody to talk to. This is hard. And I got to tell you, adult bullying is legit.
Yeah.
Even within families and toxic relationships and spouses,
Mhm.
or you may be dealing with siblings. It's a much more complex issue than we think of when we say the
Right.
word. It's not the schoolyard bully anymore. It's a
Mhm.
bigger issue. And so, um, if you have a child dealing with mental health, if you are able to reach out, and I just have to say, I know mental health there, but they're doing the best they can. But trying to get appointments and wait lists in crisis can be quite challenging. Um, it's been our reality. It's not been the easiest. And so the suicide hotline, I will tell you, as a mom with a child who struggled with that, in my kid's phone, he has a crisis plan that if he's ever
Mhm.
feeling triggered or stressed again, he has a full crisis plan with crisis text lines in his phone, the people he can call, written out what his crisis plan is of to who he can call, who he can reach out to, along with his music playlist, all of his grounding, his breath. I mean, it's written out. And then we walk through it just as you would a fire drill,
Mhm.
because if you've struggled with it, you never know what can trigger it. And you want the people to have power. And so the more you can empower your children while they're in your home, you're equipping them with the skills they're going to need in that young adulthood when it may come up again. I love your little ones there.
This is my grandson.
Oh my gosh, we got to
He
meet
doesn't
you.
want to get on camera.
Okay, well.
His name is Leo, so he's telling you
Hi,
how to spell
Leo. Leo, it is
Leo.
nice to meet you. It is nice to meet you, Leo.
This is just great information. You see him, he's
Probably
over
a
there.
little heavy for Leo.
Mhm.
But guys, I
Yeah.
do, since you have a little one back there, I want you
Uh-huh.
guys to know we actually had to create an entire little kids group because
Oh,
bullying starts as young as 3.
wow.
And so this
I
is
have
written for
seen some
kindergartners.
videos.
Yeah, these are written for kindergartners up. So not only do we have our Bullied Broken, but we have our Luke the Lionhearted series, which is a
Okay.
kindergartner dealing with it. So I don't want parents to
Wow.
think, wait, because this issue
Yeah.
starts so much younger than you think it is. So we teach kindness and compassion and giving our little guys words and gals advocate words so that if they see it happening to a friend,
Mhm.
they know how to put the vocabulary behind it to stand up. And we actually use I don't know if they hear I was looking. We actually use bendable, fun, flexible animals, like
Okay.
Luke's a lion, and we teach
Uh-huh.
the body language to show he's sad and his head's down, and a little bit of play therapy and
Oh,
different things in them. So
that's
for my
awesome.
littles, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I just think it's just amazing how you've taken this issue that was for yourself and began to be a beacon of light for other parents.
Yeah, it's what
What
I
was,
couldn't find.
yeah, I mean, I just think that's phenomenal because so often it's like, well, let me just deal with me, and how are your
Well,
kids reacting with that, with you being able to
so it's
be
actually
so public with it?
my oldest son he did publish his first book under a nom de plume, but he actually wrote a lot about his story and published it. He's 17 now. So this started when he was 12.
Mhm.
And not only does he work with me in the business, he has created a lot of our programs for, hold on, let me see if I can reach them, even
Okay.
within our like defense, taking
Upside, yeah.
ownership and empowerment. He is working on now. We go to the AACC, the American Association of Christian Counselors, and all of the content that's been written, we started in 2019, sold out first day, almost like nothing. We needed way more product because this is where parents are taking their kids, yet therapists need the resources because they don't even know this. I mean, the vocabulary of is changing so fast in this world, in this gaming and cyberbullying world. They needed to connect to kids. And so he's doing really well. He's working on his 4th life coaching certification this year. He's already started psychology early. And he's working on therapy boxes for people who may not seek out traditional therapy in the beginning, but as a way to introduce things to deal with mental health for people who would not traditionally seek out help, and ways to introduce it in a form that doesn't feel like sit on the couch and talk, right? So
That is
he's
so
doing really well. He does not like to be in front of the cat. I mean, he talks, he'll do some stuff, but he's not, he prefers to sit one-on-one. He has a counselor and therapist heart. He loves to do small groups. He loves to meet with other people who've been in tough places and help them kind of take their power back. So he loves that. My youngest, Christian, I know you've heard a little bit about him. He's on the spectrum. You would think I'd learn because, here I was a mama. My 12-year-old was going through all that crazy stuff. You figure after all of that, I would have known all the warning signs. Yet Christian, a couple of years later, he was 9 years old and dealing with bullying, that 3rd grade, 4th grade bullying. And it got so bad that I found him under his bed one day screaming, "I'd rather die than go back another day." Yeah. And so I ended up pulling him home, homeschooling him, and doing a big healing process with him. And now he has books. Can you tell we write a lot?
That's awesome.
We write a lot. Well, their stories are power, right? They can take their power back. And so now
Mhm.
he's actually an advocate for invisible disabilities and autism and service dogs. And so he speaks all over the place of equipping people. How do you interact when you see somebody with a service dog? It's for small businesses and children are really his focus. That he has everything from pet product lines to he's working on apparel to he does speaking. 12 years old.
That's amazing.
It's kind of crazy. He has another business meeting at 9 o'clock tonight. He had another one before here at 5. He's got another one tonight
Awesome.
because he gives all his money away to other service dog teams. Well, most of it, pretty much all his profit because it takes money to run a business, but he gives
That
it
is so
all
awesome.
away. Yeah,
Yeah.
he wants to help
Now he
other
just
people.
won something here recently,
He
right?
did. He just won an
Yeah.
international pitch competition. They got to pitch their businesses and
Mhm.
he won first place. I could not believe it. I mean, these are kids, amazing kids all over the world. There were 27 that kind of competed in one day, like kind of
Mhm.
had gone through all the work to get up to that level to pitch. He won first place. Talk about a proud mom. Like he has autism. He's struggled with just confidence in himself, but to be able to stand up and pitch and then win. So
Yes.
yeah, so
I
he's
love
going,
that.
they're going places, but they each talk about their story. I mean, we ended up getting Christian Service Dog to help him with his a lot of other reasons, but it helps
Mhm.
build his confidence.
Mhm.
Um, and Dante's trained for many things, but that's the biggest it does for him is it helps him to connect to other people when he's out. It's
That's
it's it's a lifeline to him. Now he does a lot of things like deep pressure and weighted blanket. He's trained for search and retrieval because my son would run and hide when he got scared. We'd lose him.
amazing.
So he's actually trained for that with scent work, all kinds of things. Dante interrupting harmful behavior. Like if he was biting or frustrated with his head with autism, he would be able to interrupt that. So he does lots of things. But the biggest job he has now is, I mean, with COVID, hangs out with him and keeps him company and is a companion. And then when he goes out to speak, um, if he does get overwhelmed, Dante's there to calm him right down with his anxiety. So,
Mm.
I mean, we've tried to take a situation that was really difficult and give our children back their power to take
Mm.
that story and then let God be the hands and feet and use it where he wants to, right?
I love that.
Let waste nothing, right? Give
Mhm.
you back your power and be a voice for others because when we tell our stories, it empowers other people to share that pain.
Mhm.
And so
So
when he
true.
can share, then other kids will. I mean, my oldest son, I was, yeah, when his book first came out, he had somebody who bought it, a mother bought it, gave
Mhm.
it to the kid and said, I just can't believe we're dealing that, that this young man, I would have never thought that he was dealing with that. And
Mhm.
the parent read, her child read it and said, I've actually been cutting myself and attempted 3 times in the last month
Mm.
because they were able to see somebody at their age with a raw story that connected to the heart, really raw. He didn't leave out a lot of junk. There are
That's
bad words and there's pain and there was drugs and there was the abuse that happened to him. It was raw,
yeah.
right? So um kind of, you never know whose story, and because of that they were able to get him the help he needed and he was able to share
Mhm.
because it empowered him to see that somebody else, he wasn't alone, right? He
Mhm.
wasn't alone. And so that's a big
Mhm.
deal. It's a big deal when you take power of your story. It doesn't let
So
it stay
true.
in darkness. It let you shine it
So
out in the
true.
light and then you let it out.
Expose it and let it to really get the healing it needs.
Mhm.
Yeah. So my last question would be, how important is it to live beyond the labels? You
Oh,
mentioned,
so important.
the spectrum and some of these labels that your children have been diagnosed with.
Mhm.
However, the things that they have accomplished, I mean, so
Mhm.
talk to us about that because there's many parents that, especially right now, there's going to be kids after this pandemic that might be behind for whatever reason when school goes back to some kind of normalcy.
Mhm.
So what advice would you give them about these labels? Well, yeah.
First, I think the biggest impact that was made to me is that different is not less. And just
Mhm.
because you're different, you are not less than. You are created uniquely and beautifully different. And I know I shared with you a little bit my oldest son when I brought him home. And guys, a little bit of hope for you here. When I brought
Mhm.
him home at 12, he could hardly write a sentence. Now, this is a kid who I knew was bright. He could speak 3 languages by the time he was 5. Bright kid. But he was so broken with no confidence, couldn't write a sentence, hardly could do math for me. He was just in his shell of himself, testing horribly, not passing any state, just in a terrible place. Less than 5 years later, so he's a senior now, less than 5 years later, that kid is changing the world with a business. But on top of that is a top athlete being recruited by D1 and D2 colleges and just received presidential awards and scholarships of well over $100,000 for 4 years academic scholarships to colleges. This kid that the system wrote off and kept putting him in more and more remedial classes,
Mhm.
they were focusing on what he couldn't do well.
Mhm.
I allowed him to show what he could do well. So if you have a
Mhm.
child that the system's focusing, for example, if they have dysgraphia, giving them more worksheets on how to write is
Mhm.
not the solution, folks. They're
Right.
empower them with the tools to take that power back. Teach them the dictation and the software and the whatever it is to empower them. You don't forget about the disability, but you
Mhm.
let them shine where they are, right?
Mhm.
Find what makes them unique. Are they artistic? Right? Neither of my kids are writers, and they got published books. Like, neither of them are writers, but they have a story to tell. And so,
Mm.
do they love both of my kids are blacksmithers. My oldest is actually creating a business in mental health to bring men in because they don't want to sit on the couch and talk,
Mhm.
banging out that pain from the blacksmithing and reshaping something that's discarded that no one wanted, a piece of scrap old metal, into something that's beautiful
Mm.
and reformed again into gorgeous pieces of art. It
Mhm.
was blacksmithing. And during that, he works with them on talking about that future and planting those seeds of where we're going. We don't be defined by what you were, right?
Mm.
Be defined by where
So
you're going. And so if your kids go back and they're not on mark, who cares?
mhm.
Who
Yeah.
cares? They are not defined by a grade. Your kids
Mhm.
are not a grade. They may be
Mhm.
behind. That's fine.
Mhm.
Show them. Show them. You be the light. You
Mhm.
show them what they were created to do. Find
Mhm.
people to mentor and speak and breathe into them who get your kids, right?
Love
It
that.
doesn't have to be a big deal. It could be a grandparent. It can be
Mhm.
somebody. I mean, the gentleman that taught my kids blacksmithing is a hobbyist and just wants to pass
Mhm.
that trade on to somebody else. And it's been
Mhm.
therapeutic for both of them. It doesn't all,
Mhm.
maybe there's somebody who loves making soaps that your kids can do that. Or they're environmentalist and they love the environment. So invest them in passion projects because when they're excited about something, you can teach education to anything if you can get somebody
Mhm.
excited about one thing.
That is true.
I mean,
That
they can
is
be excited about football. I can teach you statistics. I can teach you about
yeah.
biology and grass. And I can teach you anything. Get excited about one subject. I can teach you the world. I just
I
got to
love
get you excited about one thing.
Love that. That is just awesome. Well, this has just been a very informative interview. And I just love your insight and approach on a lot of these things. And, I'm sure there are plenty of parents who feel like this has been valuable for them. So if they want to reach out, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
So, a Bullied, Broken, Redeemed is my
Mhm.
company. Let's see if there's any way to share you, but find me there. And I would love to connect with you guys. I do some private coaching for families who are struggling, but I teach classes and leadership courses, all kinds of stuff. I think we have about 6 books out, workbooks, all on
Mhm.
Amazon and with our stuff. So, I'd love to connect with you if this is something that your family is struggling with. And I actually specialize in helping people who are leaving that public or private school model to find
Mhm.
alternative education when their kids are in crisis. That's really my big niche. If you've
Got
got
it.
kids who are not, this model isn't working,
Mhm.
we'd help you find a plan for success outside of that model. So,
Awesome. Well, this has just been so great. And we want to thank all of you guys for watching. I encourage you to reach out to Candace. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments and we'll be sure that she does get those answered for you. So, what final words would you like to share with everybody today, Candace?
mm, I think the biggest things I just like to share with parents is you have more power than you think you do. I think parents have given away a lot of power in the last several years over our kids, and I don't say that lightly. They're a huge responsibility, but
Mhm.
they need you. They desperately need you and your guidance. If something seems off, please don't let that go. There is something there tugging at your heart. Have that conversation, dig deeper, look in that phone. My heart breaks for the parents who find me after they've lost a child. Right? If something in this conversation has resonated and you're going, I need to pay better attention, do that. Don't let it wait because we don't always know what that future is going to be. And I will forever be grateful every day I wake up, I can still hug my son's neck. And I realize it could have been a very different outcome. And it took a lot of courage and a lot of hard conversations. And we drastically changed our lives. I mean, it was not easy.
Mhm.
I mean, we changed our entire lives to do that,
Mhm.
but he was worth it. His soul was worth it. Right. And so if you feel something is wrong, please don't let that go. That tugging at your heart, that little Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, your mother's intuition, pay attention.
Yeah.
They need you. So
Thank you so much. And that is just a great reminder. So often we take things for granted. We're distracted with a lot of things that are going on that are, at the end of the day, temporary. Is it really going to matter in the next hour, the next month, the next year? But when it comes to our children, that, are they need us as a lifeline. So thank you so much for that reminder.
the
And
days are long, but the years are short, right?
yes. So true. So, thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode. I encourage you to reach out to Candace if something she said resonated with you and take that step. A lot of times we are getting information overload. We just want to keep gathering facts, keep gathering opinions, but never take action. Don't let that be you. Reach out today. And thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.